things that have been implemented in a recent upgrade to the website. And Sandy is here, the Chile division director. She will walk us through how we can best utilize pathways and also what those updates are. So Sandy, if you're ready, will you please present your pathways leadership?
Right. Thank you very much, Dana. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can see the screen all right?
Yep, that's great.
All right. Our district mission is to what? It's to build new clubs and support all clubs in achieving excellence. The pathways enhancements are right in line with that mission. These changes are designed to make the learning experience better, more engaging, accessible, and relevant. Today, we're going to talk about what's new, how it impacts you and your club, and how we can work together to make the most out of these changes. Does this email look familiar to you folks? Yeah, I got this about 3 weeks ago on October 22nd. Many of you received an identical email, although not all of you did. It depended on, were you working on the most current paths? Had you even signed into Pathways? Or were you using a path that was not English speaking? The point of this email is that the pathway enhancements were now live, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, to really appreciate the changes, I think it's important we go back in time a little bit and understand the history of the Toastmaster education system. It started back in 1924 when it was founded. And it started out with our founder, Dr. Ralph Smedley. He started to teach people about improving their communication. But you know what? He was doing it all verbally. So after about 4 years, he figured, it doesn't scale, so I better introduce a manual. Now, through the years, they had incremental changes with the manual. But it wasn't until 1997 when they changed the program and it became a 2-track system. Some of you probably remember the Competent Communication Manual, which focused on the communication track, and leadership was by the Competent Leadership Manual. Now, this is the system that I started with, and this is where I got my DTM. In 2017, Pathways launched. And the big reason for this is back in 2010, the board of directors created a 5-year strategic plan, and the centerpiece was to modernize education. They wanted it to be more flexible, more technology-driven, and more accessible to people. You know what? It took 20 years for them to update that education program. Now, to really understand what the enhancements are, I want us to think a little bit more closely about the communication and leadership track. Now, when a new member came in and they wanted to be a DTM, they had to do 2 parallel tracks. One was communication, and that consisted of 4 manuals with about 40 projects. The leadership track was all about roles. They wanted you to do a role in the meeting, in your club, and in the district. Now, I wanted to dig into this a little bit, so I started looking into the old manuals. Like on the left, you see the one that was for the communication track, and they list a number of things, but if you look down at the bottom in the left, I've underlined a couple educational series. They had one called Better Speaker Series and one called Successful Club Series. And we're going to talk more about those later, but basically they are a number of pre-canned speeches, and along with the PowerPoint, you get a PDF. So then you can present these educational presentations to your club. So that's the communication track. If you look to the right for the leadership track, down at the bottom, they introduce a third educational series, which is the leadership one. So that's the education program, but I kept digging a little bit more to understand about that meeting role part. Well, if you would go to the leadership manual that we were looking at before, right at the end, it's got this project completion record. And yes, this is where you have all the different roles. You've got to put down the date you completed it, and the VPE had to sign off on it. All right, so now with that background, let's go back to what was being pulled from this 1997 education system. We're pulling this idea of serving and meeting roles and conducting education presentations. We're going to pull that into pathways. Those are going to be the enhancements. Now, to learn a little bit more about this, there's a really good presentation out there by one of our regional advisors. And the first thing she started out with, and she was like, why are we doing this again? And she actually used this word. She said that people were nagging the board of or the headquarters, and they were just constant requests from members, thousands and thousands all over the world that just wanted to pull these items back into the existing educational program. Why? Because they really felt that they would elevate the impact and the quality of our club meetings. She then went through about half a dozen different items. She talked about how it can drive consistent member participation to sustain club vitality momentum. Hey, this is all about growth of your club. Strengthen practical leadership capabilities through structured learning and mentorship. Facilitate knowledge sharing for all those presentations that we're going to be doing. Increasing member engagement to improve retention and overall program success. Hey, if people don't find value in their club, they're not going to show up. And to develop competencies progressively through continuous application and feedback. And then, for the end, to foster a culture of collaboration within clubs so that we can all work together. So as I talked about, on October 22nd, these enhancements became effective, and they did the notification through email. They were applicable to the English versions of our current paths: dynamic leadership, engaging humor, motivational strategies, persuasive influence, presentation mastery, and visionary communication. Now, some of you might be saying, wait a minute, what about those legacy paths? We'll keep working on them. You can still get credit for them. But at least at this point in time, these pathway enhancements do not apply. So again, the two main enhancements that they have to do with meeting roles and these educational presentations. Something that I'm going to show you in just a moment. In every level, they've added a new section. And in that section, it's going to talk about the required meeting roles and some resources to help you out with those roles. Then in some of the upper levels for 3, 4, and 5, they're going to bring in these educational series. And I've listed them right here, and I thought it might be sort of interesting to see when they debuted. We're talking 1993 is when the Successful Club series came on the scene. Then the Better Speaker series and Leadership Excellence series were like 2011 and 2012. Again, they think these type of enhancements can really improve your communication and leadership skills. So right now, I'm going to go through and do a demo. So everybody can see this, I'm thinking. So what I've done, I've already logged in with my credentials. Now I'm going to click into Basecamp. And when it comes up, what I'm going to do, I'm working on a couple of different paths, but let's just take a look at presentation mastery. Now when it's going to come on, I'm going to show you that I'm going to go to the overview just so you can see sort of the overall progress that I've been doing, and you can identify some of the changes that have happened and some that have not. Now, I might take a beat here, but once it does come up, what you're going to see is that it's going to show the 5 different levels. So one thing you might notice, I've got these green check marks for the first 3 levels. What that means is when October 22nd came around, I had already completed these. So these are finalized. I don't have to do anything else. But if you look down a little bit further, hey, I was still in the midst of working on a couple of my paths. Or a couple of my levels. So what I'm going to do is just briefly walk you through each of these levels and show you what's changed. So I'm going to start out with level 1. One of the first things you might notice, there's a new section here. What is this level 1 mastering fundamentals? Well, one of the things that we're going to find out once the internet catches up is there's going to be a requirements checklist and completion here. Now, one of the things that's brand new is there is a requirement that before you do your icebreaker, you need to participate as a table topic speaker. Why? Well, they thought before you dive into the icebreaker, I mean, people are nervous already, right? Oftentimes. So this way, by at least responding to a table topics question, that gives you a little bit more confidence. Then if we start going down the list, we've got the 4 projects that many of you are familiar with. The icebreaker, writing a speech with purpose, and even this 4th one. Remember, this one is special. There's actually 3 parts to evaluation and feedback. First, you have to give a speech. Then you have to implement the feedback of your evaluator, and then you need to be an evaluator. Now, one of the interesting things is because you were an evaluator in this project, for the next one, where they require you to be an evaluator, good news, you get to check that off. And then for the last role, they gave you an option. They say, do you want to be a timer or do you want to be an out-counter? So that gives you a little bit of idea of some of the changes that are in level 1. Now I'm going to move to level 2. But again, I wanted to just impress on you that green check mark meant that I don't have to do anything with that. So again, here's that new section, learning your style. Now, once this comes up, you're going to start seeing a format that's very similar for all the other levels. It starts with this blue box that gives you an overview. Then you scoot down to the resources. And this is a new document here where they're talking about club meeting roles. If you click on it, it talks about not only the things you have to do for your specific role, but what I like, it talks about how those skills translate into the real world. It's got a tutorial to help you learn how to evaluate. Then it has a bunch of resources for the different roles. For example, say you've never been a grammarian before. You can click on this, and in that script, it tells you what a grammarian does so that when you're asked to talk about your role, boom, you know what it is. It also provides a log so that when you're a grammarian, you can have a table where you can list down the people and your different notes. Similar type things for some of the other roles. Now we get into the required projects. For level 2, everybody's got to do the introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. But over here, you've got 2 distinct projects, and these depend on what path you've done. For example, previously I completed the Dynamics Leadership path. So my 2 projects were understanding my communication style and understanding my leadership style. But if you do another path, maybe you do one of these projects on active listening or something like that. The end here, we have your required meeting roles. And some of these, you're like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this, grammarian topics. When you get to speaker, what they're talking about is that you have completed all of the projects in level 2, there's 3 of them for this level. Then at the bottom, you get the option of selecting one of these different roles. And you notice, we've seen timer and out counter, but now they're introducing Toastmaster. That's a role where you need a little bit more experience. So it makes sense that they've got that one in a level 2. So we've talked about the level 1 and level 2. And as you know, as you increase with the levels, the complexity notches up just a little bit. Again, here's the new section with increasing knowledge. And what you're going to see is now we're going to have this format. They're trying to make each of these levels look very similar in their structure. We've got the overview in blue. We've got the resources for your roles below. They talk about your required and your electives. But what's this? Now we've got something different here. They're talking about one of those 3 educational series, the Successful Club series. If you scroll down a little bit more, they've got 4 different options, and you can choose one of them. And again, this is a pre-canned presentation. It comes, if you click on the Learn More, you'll see a file that you'll download. It's got the presentation, it's got the PDF. Now, some of you that are very keen on the Distinguished Club program say, wait a minute, for level 3, we need 2 people to do this. Well, this is where you could probably work with your VPE, and it might be a good idea to have those 2 people do different club series so that your club can learn a little bit more. So now we scoot down to the required meeting roles. Again, some of these you're like, yep, I've got those. Oh, but wait a minute. What is this new one down here? Introductory Mentor Informal. I bet you're all familiar with this. Somebody new comes and joins your club. Oftentimes, a club will assign a mentor to them. That's just sort of a point person for that new member to ask questions like, how do I log into Pathways? Or what are these meeting roles? What do I even do with them? Well, if you do that, you would get credit for being an introductory mentor, informal. But some of you are saying, well, wait a minute, there's a Pathways mentor program. In fact, remember back in level 2, everybody had to take that introduction to mentoring? Well, once you do that, that unlocks 4 other projects. And that's like about a 6-month commitment for it. So if you have done that, you could get credit for that as well. It could be either the informal or going through the Pathways mentor program. Right, so we've covered the levels 1, 2, and 3. And again, I said that I had already completed that, so I didn't have to do anything with that. But here, as you say, I've got a couple projects that I still have to do. But they've added this section as well. Again, it's going to be very similar to the things that we've seen before. It's going to start with that overview in that blue box. It goes through the resources. We're getting the system down. We've got the required elective. We've talked about Successful Club series. Here it is again. And you know what? These are 4 different ones than we saw in level 3. Some of you with eagle eyes probably said, "Oop, wait, there's something else new in here." That's that second educational program, the Better Speaker Series. And for this one, there's actually 10 presentations in there, and they give them all here in one fell swoop. A whole bunch of them right there. Again, the last section has the required meeting roles. They all look the same, except, what's this one down here? Specialized role, informal. Well, this is when your club is creative. Clubs have roles that aren't officially documented in Toastmaster. For example, my club, my home club, B&D Show, we have a joke master. Other people have a quiz master at the end of a meeting. They will ask people questions. So this is where you can, even though you don't have a documented role, you can get credit for that. So now we've talked about one of the paths or one of the levels that I haven't completed. Now we're going to get to level 5. And you know what? The bar is a lot higher at this point. They expect a lot out of you. Oops, here we go. Sorry. This is where you really have to demonstrate your expertise. So they're going to push you a little bit harder on this. Again, some of the same old, the overview, the resources, the required elective. Up, third time we're seeing successful club series. 3 more. There's actually a total of 11 presentations in the successful club series. Again, some of you have probably caught it. Yep, here's that third educational series, the leadership program. Again, there's 10 of them. They're all here. And these are more involved. These are almost like workshops. Okay. Then we get down to the required role. Something you might see, they've got highlighted here. Some of these general evaluator, Toastmaster, and evaluator. Yep, you've got to do it not once, but twice. The speaker, again, those are your projects that are in this level. Then you get an option of all of the different roles that we've talked about, including the club mentor and the specialized role. So hopefully that has given you a better understanding of what some of the enhancements look like and some of the changes. So now I'm going to go back to right here and pick up where I left off. Again, just to re-emphasize those 3 parts of the educational series. Again, we sort of went over this, but you saw them in levels 3, 4, and 5. These are the 11 items. And I thought you'd be interested. I was actually talking with David Gardner last night that I was going to be doing this training. And he said, you know, Sandy, you can get credit for your training that I'm doing right now as one of the successful club series. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. I came up with my own presentation. He said, no, you can get credit for that. Well, not that, I have immense, respect for David Gardner, but I actually called TI this morning and asked him about it. And they said, sure, the presentation is something that you can use, but they really would like you to personalize it. So I have personalized it. I actually have Jesse from my club that's being my evaluator right now. The second series is the Better Speakers series. Again, all sorts of stuff that's focusing more about developing your communication style, selecting your topic, dealing with that fear, beginning your speech, concluding your speech. And then we go to the Leadership Excellence series. Again, these are a little bit more complex. Things about resolving conflict, visionary leader, building a team. So I bet you folks have a couple questions. Like, why exactly, again, are they doing these educational series? And why are they adding them to pathways? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, by doing these type of presentations, there's going to be growth of the individual. But when you start moving into ones like Successful Club, hey, that's going to elevate your club experience. And then there's the Leadership Excellence series. Again, this is where you can roll up your sleeves and really get involved. Well, okay, that's about the education part, but why are these roles being added again? A lot of it, what they're talking about, and I bet Robin Love is really enjoying this. It's encouraging people to participate. Some of the clubs out there get sort of stagnant in that the same person does grammarian, the same person does topics master. So now we're really encouraging everybody to get involved in different roles. And again, there's nothing like actually doing it, getting out there and, we stumble, but this is a learning environment that we're facilitating here. Now, another question you might be asking is, with these new sections that are being added, how do we keep track of these things, for the education series and the roles in the project? Well, I already showed you, the checklists that were in there, but there are other ways that you can keep track. And I'll show you a picture in just a moment. But when you log into Basecamp, there is a profile page. And this is something we have to learn how to do, that we have to go to the profile page, and I'll show you, you scroll down to the bottom, and it's got the different roles listed. And you've got to actually enter a date in there that says that you completed the role. Then, once you've done that, the Basecamp manager, and again, I'll show you how that works, he can look at your profile, or he or she can look at your profile and verify that you've completed what you should have for your project, for your levels, and for your path. So here you go. This is if you log into Basecamp. Up here on the right by your profile, you as the person that has done something are going to select profile. You're going to scroll down a little bit here where it says meeting roles. Now to enter your date, see this little pencil over here, you're going to click on that and it's going to bring up a pop-up and you can select two things. What role is it? And then you enter the date. So this is what you, the person that did the role, does. What does the Basecamp manager do? Well, when they go into Basecamp, they go down a little bit and they select My Clubs. Here they can see, and I'm in two clubs, so or you can see people from the different clubs. They will go to the person that's requesting approval for something. They'll click on their profile. They will scoot down here and they will see if anything is listed. So it's a little bit different that we have to learn is how to track these things. Well, how can officers track their meeting roles? Well, they can do the same thing that I just showed you with the profile, but there's a couple little wrinkles here that we have to talk about. First off, there are a couple of those new meeting roles, like that informal mentoring and the specialized roles. Those are not in the profile. So somewhere else, something outside of Basecamp, you have to come up with another way of recording that. People could use Excel log sheets, meeting minutes, or Google file system. There's also some of the systems that like club websites like Easy Speak or Free Toast Host. I've not seen this yet, but apparently there's a way of looking through the history as well. So that's the tracking part of it. But you might have some other questions about some of the things that I've been talking about. And some of these I've answered already. If you say, well, what if I completed a level in my path? Well, I showed you what happened with me, right? Some of the levels, I don't have to do anything, but I still have to keep marching through the ones I haven't. And you know what? Now I've got some extra stuff that I've got to take care of. What if my path is currently in practice or progress? Will I see the new sections? Yep, that's what we just did. Remember, I was in one of the 6 current paths, and each of those levels, I showed you that section. If the level wasn't completed, again, I showed you that as well. Another question, level 1. Members are required to serve as a table topic speaker before delivering their icebreaker speech. Does a participation in table topics as a guest count? Yes, it does. But again, that is not in the profile. So that would be another item that you've got to keep track of somewhere else. If a member is working on level 1 as an evaluator, can that role be credited under level 2? Well, the way they designed this was that people would do it more starting at level 1, then level 2, and so forth. But, you don't have to do it that way. So if you do a higher level earlier, you can talk with your club and see if they're okay with it. Another question, if a member is working on 2 paths simultaneously, should the required roles be completed separately under each path? Correct. You can't be an evaluator on one path, get credit for it in path 1, and then go over to path 2 and get credit over there, just on one path. What about roles that are performed in demonstration meetings or speechcraft programs or joint club meetings? Well, if you're doing a speechcraft event, your speechcrafters, the speeches they're doing, can be credited for level 1, so those count. Now, as far as demo or joint club meetings, that depends on their club, whether they feel that the role has been fulfilled. So who's responsible for maintaining the log of the roles? Well, if you look in the Club Leadership Handbook, it is the VP of Education. However, your club can get together and discuss, and if they decide, hey, the VPE is sort of overloaded, maybe they can delegate another officer or another volunteer to help out. So what about these specialized roles that aren't in base camp? Well, we talked about that. It's the responsibility that the person that did that makes sure that they get tracked. They said there's different opportunities where a club can set up something like a spreadsheet or a log or utilize one of their web platforms. Another question, we're almost done here. If a club has a low number of members or low member attendance, and you're a person that you just took on 2 roles, you're the grammarian and you're the timer, does that count? You bet. So hopefully I have explained to you what's new with the pathway enhancements, talked about how they impact you and your club, and how we have opportunities that we can work together to make the most out of these. Back to you, Dana.
Thank you for that very informative presentation. One thing, would you be able to share, or is that material available somewhere online? Would you be able to put that in the chat for
Sure,
the rest
I
of
can
the
put that
attendees?
in yeah, I can put that in the chat.
Okay. One question I did have was, if we have done some of those roles or say given educational presentations before, can we use those kind of past experiences or
That was
presentations?
another. TI knows when I'm calling. I said, hey, wait a minute. What about before October 22nd? They said, if you have some type of documentation that you've done that, go for it.
Perfect. Well, Pathways seems to be like a growing mountain. I was hoping to get up there sometime soon, but a little bit more to go.
Yeah. Just to throw it out there, if people have questions on it, please feel free to reach out to me. So I can put my contact info in the chat too.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much. So at this time, we're going to take a little 5-minute break, get up and go to the restroom, get something to drink. When we come back, we'll go into the breakout rooms for our individual offices, where we'll talk about and learn about what are the roles and expectations. So if you haven't done so already, please include the acronym of your office role in your name on your Zoom profile. And we will meet back here at C742. So just take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and reconvene for our breakout sessions.